Chilling tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications. This episode of Chilling Tales for Dark Nights is brought to you by Fume. Looking to trade that bad habit of yours for some fresh air this spring? Fume is an award-winning flavored air device designed to help you replace your bad habit with a harmless one. It uses no vapor, no electronics, no chemicals, only natural, delicious flavors. Start the year off right with the good habit by going to tryfume.com/chilling and getting the Journey Pack today. Fume is giving listeners of the show 10% off when they use my code CHILLING to help make starting the good habit that much easier. Start the good habit at tryfume.com/chilling. That's tryfum.com/chilling to save 10% off the Journey Pack today. It's time to turn off the lights and turn on the dark.
Chilling tales for dark nights.
Good evening, listener. You're listening to Chilling Tales for Dark Nights. On tonight's edition, we invite you to leave behind your safe reality and descend with us into the frightening depths of the most terrifying imaginations with 2 audio adaptations of frightening fiction about unethical employment and painful parables. I'm your host, Steve Taylor, and tonight I'll be your guide as we traverse the dimly lit corridors of your darkest dreams. Joining us tonight to help bring to life the frightening fiction of Joshua J. Henry and Lorraine Gray are voice talents Olivia Steele, Terri Hudson, and Kevin Barbare. Now, get your ticket ready, take your seat in our theater of the minds, and brace yourself. It's time to turn off the lights and turn on the dark. Our first tale this evening is written by Joshua J. Henry and is performed by Olivia Steele, Terri Hudson, and Kevin Barbare. In it, we meet a nurse on her first day working at a private prison that boasts about its phenomenal healthcare service. Little does she understand the extent this facility is willing to take to keep its prisoners alive. Now, without further ado, I present to you Life Row.
Hi, Abigail Gander.
Yes, you must be Mrs. Anderson.
Please, call me Grace. Only the inmates have to refer to me as Mrs. Anderson.
Okay, pleased to meet you, Grace.
Likewise, you came very highly recommended by your hospital.
Yeah, they loved me there. I almost felt guilty leaving, but this was such a great opportunity, I couldn't let it pass me by.
Oh, I'm sure they understand. No one should work in a psych ward forever, and you worked there for quite some time, right?
7 years. I started right after graduating college.
That's one hell of a way to cut your teeth as a nurse.
It had its challenges, but it wasn't too bad. Most patients were quite sweet, and only a few were violent. One time, a woman grabbed me by the hair and yanked me to the ground.
Your charge nurse mentioned that incident to me. He said that you managed to quell the situation without even laying a finger on the woman.
It's just about knowing your patients. I'd spent quite a bit of time with her, so I knew how to de-escalate things.
Well, that's just the kind of care that we're looking for. Now, if you follow me, I'll give you the grand tour. I know prisons have a bad reputation for horrible health care, but I want to assure you that that is not the case here.
Oh, I know. The prison has the lowest mortality rate of any prison in the world. Per capita, it's better than most hospitals.
You did your homework. Excellent. Yes, our founder, Baylor Denvers, actually got his start by running a series of hospitals and medical equipment factories.
He actually founded the hospital I used to work for.
Really? What a small world. Well, when he decided to get into the privatized prison market, he wanted to continue his long tradition of exceptional medical service. Since our founding, Denver's Reformatory has provided all its inmates with high-end medical services that were only previously available to the extremely wealthy. There are quite a few nurses' stations and specialized medical wings in the building, but you'll be working under me on Life Row.
Life Row?
Oh, sorry, that's a little joke we have here. Since the state abolished the death penalty, we don't have a death row. Instead, we have a whole wing for housing prisoners serving life sentences that are kept separate from the general population, hence...
Life Row. Gotcha.
Yes, and generally that's where the older inmates are, and so they require a little more medical attention than the rest of the prison. And here is the nurses' station where you'll be working.
Grace, I got the cart all loaded up for you.
Thank you. Aaron, this is Abigail. Abigail, this is Aaron.
It's a pleasure to work with you. Please, call me Abby.
Nice to meet you, Abby.
Did you get that cupcake I asked for?
It's on the cart.
Perfect.
A cupcake?
We have a little celebration today at the end of our rounds. You'll see later.
Oh, okay.
Now, how about you follow me as I give out the first round of medications today?
Sure.
All right. Our first stop is Peter Bowen. He is serving a life sentence for accidentally killing someone during a drunken brawl.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, but don't let that bother you. He's as kind as could be, just made a horrible mistake when he was young. Now, Mr. Bowen has orthostatic hypertension and has to take 10 milligrams of midodrine 3 times a day. I also like to check his blood pressure to make sure he's doing well. Good morning, Mr. Bowen.
Morning, Mrs. Anderson. Got a new friend?
This is Mrs. Gander. She will be shadowing me for the next few weeks.
Pleased to meet you, Mr. Bowen.
Nice to meet you. Say, is that cupcake over there for me?
Afraid not. You've still got a while to go.
In another 2 months, I'll be a fifth of the way there.
Well, then maybe I'll sneak you a cupcake in 2 months. Blood pressure is looking good, Mr. Bowen.
Good. See you later, Mrs. Anderson. Good meeting you, Miss Gander.
You too, Mr. Bowen. What did he mean by a fifth of the way there?
Oh, in 2 months, he'll have served the first 10 years of his life sentence.
Is that the fifth of something?
Not familiar with the law?
No, sorry, I only know basic stuff.
That's no problem. You pick up a lot just by working here. Essentially, with the leaps forward in medical care over the past few decades, life expectancy has gone through the roof. So much so that the state felt the need to define a life sentence. Especially because of this prison, life sentences can vary too much. So the state defined a life sentence as 50 years of incarceration.
Oh, that doesn't...
Seem very long?
Yeah. Is that mean to think?
No, I understand. A few groups and organizations are protesting that rule. But think of it this way. If someone does something horrible in their 30s, they won't be released until they're in their 80s.
Yeah, but
Here's our next stop. This is Mr. Mirko Samir. He is a type 2 diabetic and needs an insulin shot after every meal. He should have finished breakfast by now. He was convicted of murdering his wife for insurance money, but he's a gentle giant. His memory is starting to go, so he does get confused sometimes. Good morning, Mr. Samir. How was breakfast?
Hello, it was good. Are you my nurse?
I sure am. My friend here is new and I'm showing her around. This is Mrs. Abigail Gander.
happy to meet you, Mr. Samir.
Hello. Can you check my door for me? It's been getting stuck and I can't get out of my room.
I'll send someone over to look at that later. Okay, all done. We'll be back after lunchtime, Mr. Samir.
Okay, bye.
How old is Mr. Samir?
I believe he just turned 84 this past year.
So you weren't kidding about long life expectancies.
Not at all. The vast majority of our inmates actually live long enough to see the end of their sentences, even here on Life Row. Just a few years ago, we released a woman who was 97 years old into the care of her great-grandchildren.
That's remarkable.
That's our mission statement. Baylor Denvers swore that when he opened this prison, that all inmates would live to see the end of their sentences. It is our duty to ensure that justice is served and that no convict perishes before paying for their crime. Just ask our last inmate here, Liam Colton.
Jesus Christ, what is that?
This is Mr. Colton, our oldest inmate here at Denver's Reformatory.
He doesn't have any limbs.
No. As he aged, pumping blood into his extremities was putting too much of a strain on the dialysis machine, so they were removed for greater efficiency. Now, Mr. Colton here requires the most care, so we visit him about 10 times throughout the day. Come on, you can step into the room. I assure you he is not a threat. All right, where to begin? Well, most of Mr. Colton's vital organs have been replaced with artificial prosthetics, his heart, his lungs, and such. His sternum and chest have been removed so we can quickly access those prosthetics in the event of an emergency. The dialysis machine takes the toxins out of his blood since his liver shut down. His stomach was removed after that started failing, so he gets all his nutrition through the IV. Oh, and since his eyelids rotted off, I like to add a few drops of saline every time I visit. Mr. Colton, this is Mrs. Gander. She will be helping me with your care. Would you like to say hello?
Please, kill me.
My God.
Kill you? But Mr. Colton, this is a day to celebrate. I even brought you a cupcake. I know you can't eat it, but I thought the gesture would be nice. After all, today marks the completion of your 3rd life sentence.
Please.
Yep, now you just have 2 more to go.
No.
1 life sentence for every little girl you raped and butchered. And don't worry, after what you did to Baylor Denver's little girl, he made sure that you'd outlive him and serve all of your sentences.
This episode of Chilling Tales for Dark Nights is brought to you by Fume. Spring is in the air, folks. Let's keep the air fresh this season, huh? I know breaking that filthy habit of yours is tough, but maybe you're just approaching it the wrong way. Sure, cold turkey is one way to do it, but that's a little like climbing Everest in flip-flops. That's to say, you're probably not going to make it. That's why I want to tell you about Fume. It's an award-winning flavored air device designed to make kicking that habit a little less of an uphill battle. See, not every part of your habit is bad. With a Fume device, you can indulge the harmless parts of your habit but stay clear of the bad ones. They use no vapor, have no electronics, and contain no harmful chemicals, just natural, delicious flavors. With Fume, instead of completely depriving yourself of a bad habit, you're shifting it to a good habit. Kinda genius when you think about it, right? I like this Fume of mine, folks. It tastes great for starters, fresh and natural, but full of flavor, like a nice herbal tea. It's also fun to fidget with. That bit is deliberately done as part of its design. Little moving parts and magnets to keep your hands busy when you're feeling anxious. They also have this new magnetic stand, which you can fidget with too. You can spin your Fume around on it. I once did this for like 4 hours. I get a kick out of it. It's kind of an esoteric experience and pleasure. Anyway, no more climbing Everest in flip-flops. Cold turkeys for the birds. Start the year off right with the good habit by going to tryfume.com/chilling and getting the journey pack today. Fume is giving listeners of the show 10% off when they use my code CHILLING to help make starting the good habit that much easier. Start the good habit at tryfume, that's tryfum.com/chilling to save 10% off the journey pack today. Thanks for your support and for supporting our valuable sponsors. I hope you enjoyed Life Row, as written by Joshua J. Henry and performed by Olivia Steele, Terri Hudson, and Kevin Barbare. Chilling Tales for Dark Nights newcomer Terri Hudson is a welcomed addition to our team of terrors and was brought into the fold by none other than our very own Paul J. McSorley. Olivia Steele is a voice actress who loves the spooky side of things. Her talent varies between gameplay, live stream archives, singing, and other voiceover-related things. Our second tale of the evening is written by Lorraine Gray and is performed by Kevin Barbare. In it, we meet a man on his way south to look for work who tells his story of a dying rural town where he lived, loved, and lost. Now, without further ado, I present to you The Dark Secret of Woodbower.
Nestled away under the shadow of a vast thicket of spruce trees hides the town of Woodbower. Although once a booming industrial borough, its inhabitants number fewer each day. That's where I've just come from. Work dried up, so I headed on the road south looking for a job. I moved to Woodbower in '72 to work at the local sawmill as a machinist. My apartment was over the general store in the heart of town. Even then, it was a quiet place to live, and most folks kept to themselves. Then I met Leanne. She was a knockout. Everyone in town loved her. She was sweet and bubbly, and never had a harsh word to say about anyone. Luckily for me, she worked at the store, so I saw many of her. While in my apartment one afternoon, I spotted a young girl on the other side of the street. I'd say she was about 15 or 16. She looked peculiar, and it took me a while to determine why. The obvious thing that stood out about her was her thick sunglasses, the kind that cataract sufferers wear. But there was also something odd about her hair. It was thick and bushy. It didn't sit right or suit her. Then I worked out it must have been a wig. Every day Leanne worked, this young girl would loiter across the road staring at the store. Then I asked my foreman about her when we were having a beer in the bar one night. Turns out this unfortunate girl was Leanne's daughter, Molly. Folks were too polite to ask her what illness she had. Some guessed it was cancer, and others thought it was a skin condition of some sort. My heart immediately went out to Leanne. She was a hard-working single mom with a sick daughter, yet she always greeted you with a genuine smile. Some people around town even said that Molly seemed to just turn up one day, and they questioned if she was even her daughter. Over the next few months, I got closer to Leanne and even found the courage to ask her out on a date. She hadn't much free time away from Molly or the store, so I took her out to the lake one afternoon on her lunch break. We sat in the sun on an old blanket and had a picnic. She told me stories of the town's history as we sat there. The lake we sat beside was incredibly deep, as it used to be a gravel quarry. It was shut down in 1956 due to a terrible accident, and the county decided to fill it in, as no contractors wanted to take it up again. She said the town felt cursed after that, but thankfully, the logging company came in and kept the town alive. After that picnic, we were smitten with each other, and I did everything I could to spend time with my sweet Leanne. I wanted our relationship to move to the next level, so I tried to get to know her daughter more. But Molly was so incredibly shy. She had been homeschooled, so she was used to being isolated from the other kids. Her mother tried to get her to socialize more, but Molly clung to her like a timid child. One day, when she was waiting for her mom to finish work, some boys from the high school started pestering poor Molly. They were pulling at her hair and trying to take her glasses. She didn't cry or get angry. She just tried to move away and cover herself up further. Seeing this, I instantly became steamed and marched over there like a crazed bear. As I approached, the two boys saw the anger in my eyes and started to back off. I yelled some curses at them and put myself between them and Molly. They ran off, chuckling to themselves, and I turned and put my hands on Molly's skinny shoulders. This was the closest I'd ever gotten to her, and through her dark glasses, I could see one of her eyes was lazy. It didn't faze me, though, and I asked her if she was all right. She smiled at me. That was the only time I had ever seen her express emotion on her pale little face. It warmed my heart to see it. Leanne rushed over from the store and asked her daughter many questions, but all Molly would say was that the boys were okay and not to worry. I really ought to have thanked those boys, as we became almost like a little family after that incident. Molly came out of her shell a bit, and we spent more and more time together. There were no baby photos of Molly in their home, so I asked Leanne about this. She gave me the saddest story of how she was in an abusive relationship, so she had to give Molly up for adoption. Her ex ended up in jail, where he later died during a prison riot, so Leanne felt safe to get her daughter back. After a few months, I decided to buy a ring. I had never fallen for someone as hard as I did for Leanne. Fate, however, had other plans. Before I got up the nerve to get on bended knee, a drunk driver took my love from me. It happened outside the store as she walked to meet Molly, as she had done every day. I had a large apartment, so I took the poor kid in. I couldn't let either of us grieve alone. I regret that decision now. Don't get me wrong, Molly is a great kid, but I'm on the road now because of her. One night, while reminiscing about Leanne, she told me how comfortable she felt around me. She asked if she could take off her wig and glasses. Of course, I said yes. She was like my daughter by this point. She kept asking if I was sure and warned me that once she showed me, I would never see her the same way again. This didn't faze me at all. We were in the hall, and she stood opposite a long mirror. She smiled at me through her reflection. Her hands moved to the back of her head. She parted her hair and pulled the wig aside. You may think me a simple liar, but what I saw no man should ever see. Where I expected to see a scalp, I saw instead a gaping maw. The back of her head was missing, I was staring into a seemingly never-ending void. It was a concave chasm of never-ending darkness. I tried to look away and peered back at Molly's face in the mirror. Then I saw her eyes, unclouded by her dark glasses. They were too unnatural. Dark pools with gray orbs floating within them. My face could not hide my fear and sheer shock at the sight of Molly's true self. She seemed to notice as her expression grew more intensely saddened, and tears began to well up in her disturbing eyes. The next moments are a blur. I blacked out. All I can remember was some kind of piercing scream. When I came to, the morning sun was blinding my eyes. I was lying on the hall carpet, dazed and still shaking from shock. I got to my feet and made my way to the kitchenette. I found a note in Molly's handwriting telling me she was gone. She apologized and said she didn't mean to hurt anyone. Her words confused me, but noticing the time, I had to run to work. As my truck pulled up to the sawmill, I was stopped by the sheriff. I looked on and saw the devastation. The mill and the logging plant were utterly destroyed. No cause has officially been given. All we know is that there was some kind of explosion. That put an end to the only source of industry in Woodbower. Without it, the town will most likely fade into dust. All that will be left is a ghostly shell. I can now guess what caused the quarry disaster all those years ago. Here's a little tip. If you see a girl like Molly, be kind, but try not to get too close. I don't know what she is or really where she came from. Without the loving Leanne, though, I know that she is terribly alone. Bad luck follows that poor girl wherever she may go. Thanks for the coffee, and for listening to this wandering man's tale. I must return to the road now. I have more miles to cover before I find another job far away from Woodbower.
I hope you enjoyed The Dark Side of Woodbower, as written by Lorraine Gray and performed by Kevin Barbare. You can hear more of voice actor Kevin Barbare right here on our very own network. On to the shows. Longtime resident Otis Gyrie has his very own show right here on the network, Scary Stories Told in the Dark, which you can hear every Sunday night. We also have Eric Peabody's Horror Hill, a podcast dedicated to some of our deeper and darker tales. We hope you check him out. And Drew Blood's Dark Tales airs Fridays, featuring some southern down-home horror. And don't forget to check out the Fear from the Heartland archives, featuring more than 120 episodes. Well, friends, our weekly descent into the depths has just about come to a close. But before we go, I'd like to take a moment to thank you for joining us for tonight, and remind you to take a moment to stop by our iTunes page and leave Chilling Tales for Dark Nights a 5-star review and a kind word. And follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram if you haven't already. And of course, subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can find an archive of our work going back to 2012. And consider signing up as a patron at our website, chillingtalesfordarknights.com, to show your support and get all of our content ad-free. I'm your host of the evening, Steve Taylor, and it's been a pleasure. Tune in again next week when we once again turn off the lights and turn on the dark. See you next Monday. Sweet dreams, listener. Sweet dreams.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.